Good evening. My name is John H. and I am an alcoholic. Welcome to the Code Blue Big Book Action Seminar. What we're going to do in this seminar, guys, is we're going to go through the first 164 pages of our big book, our Guide to Freedom, and we're going to do exactly what it says. I myself am no big book guru. I am no spiritual wonder man. I'm just a simple drunk who was almost dead from the disease when a couple recovered alcoholics took me through the book. I did the work, and it saved my life. Now, as a result of that, I try to pass on what has been so freely given to me. Now, I borrow heavily from the Joe and Charlie Big Book Weekend tapes. I borrow heavily from that smartass Clancy. I borrow from Chuck C. I borrow from all of the giants who have gone before me. So please, get yourself a big book, large print I prefer, a highlighter and a pen, and bring your willingness. Get ready to change your life. Thanks for listening. Good evening, everybody. I'm John. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, John.
During the 1950s, a man by the name of Max C., now dead, started a group in Winnipeg, Manitoba called the Golden Slippers. The group was a back to the basics of the big book kind of group, especially for those people who could not stay sober for any length of time. The group took a bunch of chronic slippers and walked them through the steps, taking the action exactly as laid out by the first 100 men and women who wrote the basic textbook Alcoholics Anonymous. This is not your typical thanks for sharing kind of AA meeting, nor is it like any seminar. Participants are asked to do all 12 steps as laid out in our basic textbook. One or more of the people who have done this work before will be guides to lead you through the instructions in our basic textbook using a dictionary published at about the same time as the book Alcoholics Anonymous to help us better understand the directions as they were written by the first 100 men and women. We ask every participant to commit to the entire process. Though we read and study the AA Big Book, this group is not limited to members of AA. We who have participated in these groups before have come to understand that these sessions make us much better sponsors. We can now lead people through the steps exactly as given to us by those who have gone before unfettered and unchanged. In addition to being a boot camp for sponsors, we also feel this is especially valuable to those who have been through some sort of treatment or rehab and have been in effect left off at 3 or 5. Recovery requires that we do all 12 steps. We recover in AA by taking the steps, and if we don't take the action as described in our basic textbook, we might not recover. The study and action sessions will guide you through the steps precisely as the first 100 men and women laid them down. These are back to the basics, accepting the simple kit of spiritual tools that's been laid at our feet. Let's open with the set-aside prayer. God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Peace. All right, welcome everybody. One of the guys, Jason, is up visiting his father, who is probably on the way out with cancer. So a few other people I know have relapsed. One of them, finally after a week texted me back, I'm glad he's alive. He's in the hospital, disappeared for a week. We kind of forget that this is a deadly disease. And I mean, it's not only deadly to the alcoholic. Just the other day, a fella up near Ely was watching, oh dear Lord, he was watching his brother's baby, and he left to get drugs and alcohol. There was a fire and the baby's dead. Another guy down south, wrong way, going the wrong way, head-on collision, 2 dead. So, not only do the alcoholics kill themselves, but we're also killing other people. And, it's unfortunate. And I've never seen so many people, like I say, die since I've been coming to these rooms seriously for the last 6 years. And, it's so sad because we do know what to do. We do know what has helped millions and millions of sick and dying alcoholics to recovery. And it's the steps. And, people, and I'm one to talk. I tried for years. I tried going to meetings only, and I would get bouts of sobriety, but I always ended up relapsing because something inside of me was not right, And the only way that I knew how I could feel better was by taking just a couple of drinks, right? So we're gonna do a little bit of review from last week, just a tiny little bit. So let's go to page 64. By the way, man, I had, it's kind of fun because I'm a control freak, even though I try to practice this program. And I had a situation at work that I just could not control. There's no way. And, the more I tried to control it, the worse things got. And on Monday, I went in and I knew it was going to come to a head. And I just said, God, I'm giving this up to you. I'm done, man. And I'll be doggone if it didn't kind of fix itself and things worked out. I mean, it's just another one of those coincidences. We let go and don't try to control it, and ask God for help, and things seem to work out. So let's look at the top of page 64. All right, there he is. All right. I was saying, Andrew, our other musketeer, is up visiting his father, Jason, who's might not have much longer to live. So right at the top, let's go to. I'm sorry, go to the bottom paragraph on page 63. So this is saying that up to this point in the book, what have we done? The forewords and the Roman numerals and all this way, we've got conclusion 1. That we're alcoholics, man, and we're out of control and we can't manage our lives, right? We got conclusion number 2, that the only thing that's going to save our lives is a power greater than ourselves. And the reason that I think that is because I saw that it's worked for other people, and then step number 3 is simply saying, hey, I am going to try things a different way. I'm going to let my sponsor tell me what I should be doing. I'm going to ask God for help, or in its most basic form, I'm just going to do the rest of these doggone steps and see if something happens, right? So bottom of page 63, next we launched out on a course of vigorous action, okay? And again, that vigorous action is 4 through 12. The first step of which is a personal house cleaning, and that's step 4. Which many of us had never attempted. I came into these rooms and I thought I did steps 1, 2, and 3, but I always went the other way to insanity and death. I never went the other way, which was to accept spiritual help, right? That little thing I handed out on day 1. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, that's step 3. We're making a decision, essentially the book says to let God be our director, but it could be just to do the rest of these steps. But step 3 has little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and to be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. So that means that once we make the decision that we're going to do this thing, we start on it right away. We don't wait for a year. It says our liquor was but a symptom. I thought all my problems were caused by my drinking. But you know what, man? My problems were there, and I used drinking as a solution to try to cover up my problems and try to be able to cope. So we had to get down to causes and conditions, right? So that's where we stopped last week. And nothing is in this world, I think, happens without action, right? And in step 4, what we're going to do is we're going to look at things as they really are. I don't think anything in my life ever changed me more than doing step 4, because I saw that I had been looking at things incorrectly my whole life. I'd been judging people incorrectly, I'd been perceiving incorrectly, and I'd been treating people incorrectly. And I thought that I was a good guy that was getting picked on by everybody, right? And when I did step 4, all of that changed, and I saw that I was actually responsible for making the mess that I was in. Some of us, what we do, is when we do a step 4, what we think it is, we think it might be a life story. So what we do is we write out our life story, and then we share it with somebody. But when we write out our life story, there's no new information in there. I know my life story. Right? I know that I did this and that and moved here and did that and this. So step 4 is absolutely not writing your life story at all. We need to discover new information, right? And I think what we want to find out is we want to find out what is blocking us from our decision in step 3 to try things a different way, maybe to let God be our director, right? I'm going to read a little bit out of the 12 by 12. By the way, everybody should get a 12 by 12 if you don't have one. I'm going to read a little bit. This is actually under the 5th step, but And you don't need to go there, but it's on page 56, and it's talking about not doing the 4-step and sharing. And it says, some people are unable to stay sober at all. Others will relapse periodically until they really clean house. That was me. Relapsing, even AA old-timers, and I see this in the rooms all the time. Remember, I make fun of the old duffers, right? Never worked a step in my life and proud of it, right? Even AA old-timers, sober for years, often pay dearly for skipping this step. They will tell how they tried to carry the load alone, how much they suffered of irritability, anxiety, remorse, and depression, and how unconsciously seeking relief they would sometimes accuse even their best friends of the very character defects they themselves are trying to conceal. I mean, who wants to get sober if you're gonna be irritable, anxiety prone, remorseful, and depressed, right? And you're going to attack your good friends, accusing them of the very character defects that you have. That's that you spot it, you got it thing, right? And I mean, I got to tell you, to this day, I still do that at work, right? I am Mr. Top Salesman here, but I see somebody else taking the shortcuts that I take all the time. What do? You can't do that. That's right. And of course, well, I do it because I'm too busy, right? So it's okay for me, but not for you, right? So, I mean, it's just crazy. And I got a couple of more things, but my book just flipped shut on me. They always discovered that relief never came by confessing the sins of other people. Right? Everybody has to confess his own. That's the old story. I've taken 100 inventories since I joined AA, but none of them were mine, right? That's so we've got to do this for ourselves. And we've got to discover new information. So when do we do step 4, right? When do we do it? First of all, this, by the way, our book tells us this is a life and death errand. And I mean, every day you see people dying and people killing other people, albeit by accident, but people are still dying. So when do we do step 4? Well, we just read that step 3 will have little permanent effect unless at once. That means as soon as we do step 3, we start on step 4, right? 4 always comes right after 3. There was a professional in the field, and he was counseling people, newly sober people. He's saying, hey, stay sober for a couple of years before you do your 4th step, right? Well, I wonder how many people that advice killed, right? Because you know what? We don't do our 4th step. The only way we're going to find relief is by drinking again. So what are some reasons that people don't want to do their 4th step? I think the biggest one is fear. People are afraid. And I mean, a lot of that falls on us older members. We want to play King on the Mountain. You wait until you do the 4th step. You're gonna be. You just wait till you do it. You're gonna see all the and that's not right, right? Blah blah blah. Knowing that we might get drunk if we don't do step 4. I mean, why wouldn't we do it right away? So fear is a big one. Incidentally, the principle for step 4 is courage. The other reason people don't do it is confusion, right? I mean, there's all kinds of 4-step inventories out there. One of them is even 40 pages. Of course you'd be confused if you try to do that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do the 4th step according to the Big Book Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, if we do this, we are guaranteed by our founders and by other people that have done it that we've got nothing to fear, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you this instructions in the book as they were taught to me by people who know a heck of a lot more than I do. Real quick, I almost forgot to tell you the story about my tooth. About 10 years ago, when I was still drinking and using and doing everything, I had a bad tooth right here, and after it got really bad, I went to the dentist, and he started to drill on it. He was going to give me a root canal, and he saw something really bad in that tooth, and he said, "Oh my God, I'm not charging you anything. Here's a specialist. Get out of here," right? And so I went to the specialist, and they ended up pulling the tooth out, and they said, "You got to get a new tooth." So Of course, drinking and using, I didn't do a doggone thing, so I got a big old gap right here. I sober up. I've been sober for about a year, and I say, doggone it, I want to get a tooth, right? I want to be able to eat steak. I want to get a tooth. About a year later, I said, that's it, man. I got to get this tooth. I was eating a BLT the other day, and it hit, and it really hurt. A year later, I said, that's it, man. I got to get this tooth done. I got to get the tooth. Finally, 6 months after that, I said, that's it. I'm getting the tooth fixed. But something was a little bit different here. What I did is I took action. Instead of making a decision, I called the dentist. I got an appointment. I went in. They showed me the pros and cons of a bridge versus an implant. I gave them a heck of a lot of money. I scheduled it, and I got it done. So my decision to get a new tooth, nothing happened until I took action. And it's the same with our decision in step 3. We can make that decision, right? I turned it over to God a long time ago, but I'm still relapsing and doing this. No. When we don't turn anything over to God in step 3, what we do is we make the decision to do the rest of the steps. By taking the rest of the steps, that's how we turn it over, man. And until we take action, nothing is going to happen. So again, if we do this step according to the big book, I guarantee you've got nothing to fear, and you've got everything to gain. One of the guys that I learned from, Charlie, told me that the first time he did a 4-step, he wrote out a 92-page history of his life. And again, it was all old information, right? Things that he already knew. And, I guess a couple of things happened. Number one, when he was in meetings and people said, have you done your 4-step yet? He could say, yes, I did it. But, he really hadn't done it. A couple of other things he said happened is he did at least confess some things to another person that had been bothering him. So he got a little bit of relief by confessing some secrets that he had kept, right? But essentially, he just looked at old information, and he did not. It did not prepare him to go forward with steps 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, some people think that it's a list of dirty, nasty, rotten things that we've done, and that's not what step 4 is at all. Bill Wilson said take a fearless and moral inventory. He did not say take an immoral or amoral inventory. If he wanted a list of dirty, rotten things, he would have used immoral or amoral, but he didn't. He used moral, and moral equals truth, right? The things as they really are, the right and wrong of any given situation. The truth about things, right? The truth about things. This, by the way, I got this. I had to write this joke down. I picked it up yesterday in the bridge section of the paper, and I changed it. It didn't have anything to do with alcoholism, so I changed it around. Marriage with an alcoholic reminds me of a deck of cards. You start off with 2 hearts and a diamond, but somewhere along the way, you're going to need a club and a spade, right? Now, funny enough, that could be the alcoholic that wants the club and the spade, or it could be the other person, right? Because we're so doggone resentful about everything. So step 4 is a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And we are the only stock in trade that we have in this business of staying sober, right? And nobody can make us drink, right? You make me want to drink, right? Well, people, I'll admit people can make us thirsty, but we are the ones that decide if we're going to pick up that first drink or not. Nobody else does that. We do that. Right? So what we're going to do in the 4th step is we are going to find the flawed thinking processes that block us off from God, right? We've made a decision for God to direct us, but if our minds are filled with damaged and unsaleable goods, God can't get in, right? So we'll read a little bit out of the book. We've only got maybe 4 pages out of the book today. So we are on page 64. We're on the first full paragraph, right under stop week 7. If you missed last week, get on Code Blue Big Book, and you gotta hear, because it's a very important week last week. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. So highlight this was step 4, and somewhere in there write courage. Courage. Okay, that's the principle. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory, highlight these next two lines, is a fact-finding and a fact-facing process. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock and trade. Okay, so all we want to do is we want to discover the truth about things as they really are, right? And by the way, I do want everybody to read the fourth step in the 12 and 12 because they talk about the basic instincts. We did talk about those a little bit last week, but the basic instincts we're going to see today when I run some columns. The threat against our basic instincts is what's going to make us resentful, it's going to make us fearful, and it's going to make us lash out, right? So we've got to know what our basic instincts of life are. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. Okay, we did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly, circle the word honestly, and highlight the next sentence. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which had caused our failure, right? I mean, because nobody comes to AA on a long winning streak. We all get here when we're failing, right? That's why we come here, because we are failing in our lives. Being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, was what had defeated us, we considered its common manifestations. Underline common manifestations. Okay, and we're gonna talk about those a little bit. So let everybody, that folder that you have, get out that folder and pull out your step 4 inventory comparison sheet. It's in there somewhere. Oh, it's right here. I'm sorry. Didn't you get my fancy new? You get a fancy new folder today.
Oh,
that's the these.
Why is mine pink?
Yeah. Well, he doesn't want to pick one. This has all of the 4th step stuff in it. I usually hand it out each day. There are resentment sheets. There's our fear sheets, and there are hurts and harm sheets. Everybody's got 2 of them. Make copies. Make copies of all of those. And this is something too, make copies of everything, because when you're taking somebody through this book, when you're sponsoring somebody, you're going to want to be able to give them copies of all this stuff. So, but for your own good, when you're doing your 4th step, you're going to need a lot more of those sheets that are resentments. I think I filled out about 20 of them, and the fears, I probably had 10 of the fears, and I had a heck of a lot of those hurts and harm sheets, so make copies of those. So Bill compares our step 4 inventory to a business, right? So in the business, it's a fact-finding, fact-facing truth about the stock and trade, right? So on the other side, for personal, it says searching, fearless, moral, ourselves, okay? So what does searching mean? Searching means, and you don't need to write this, but it means thoroughly scrutinizing, penetrating, piercing, shrewd, sharp intent. So we really have to scrutinize things, right? Here's where people get confused. They get confused with fearless. I had another fella, he said, there's no way I can do this because I'm not fearless. I'm full of fear. And he said, I can't do it. I won't do it, right? Well, what does fearless mean? It doesn't mean that we're without fear. It means that we're going to be bold, brave, courageous, intrepid, valiant, gallant, plucky, lion-hearted, heroic, daring, audacious, undaunted, unflinching, gutsy, feisty. It means we're going to walk through our fear, right? That's what it means. We're going to have fear, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay, what does moral mean? That's where everybody gets confused. Moral, right? It's concerned with the principles of right and wrong behavior, the goodness or badness of human character. Moral also means truth, right? It means truth, it means meaning, it means significance, and it means teaching. It means teaching. That's wonderful. We're gonna be teaching ourselves what is going on. And then it says on the business side, we're going to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods. Okay, so on our side, it says find flawed thinking processes, and we're going to get rid of them promptly and without regret. So regret means without disappointment over them, without remorse about them, means missed opportunity, lament, or sorrow. We are going to get rid of these things without regret, right? Fear, trepidation, dread, right? Likely to cause pain. We think it's going to cause pain. Resentment, fear, and harm done to others are the three things that we're going to be looking at in the 4-step. And the flawed thinking process says flawed means faulty, defective, unsound, incorrect, or fallacious. That means that the things, why we've been failing in life is because we've got some defective human processes that we are doing. They're unsound and they're incorrect, right? I said last week that resentments our incorrect judgment of other people. We're judging people incorrectly, right? That's why we're standing on our mountain. Fear is incorrect perception. You know, we're afraid of things and it's incorrect. And the hurts and harms we do others are incorrect treatments of other people, right? So, you know, if somebody has a business and they went out and they bought a bunch of ladies' purses from the 1980s, and they got them sitting on all these big displays, and those purses aren't selling at all. And the owner of the business is saying, well, nobody knows what's good for them. They're at such a good price, they should buy them. Well, these purses are taking up valuable floor space. Nobody's buying them. We're paying interest on the money we borrowed to buy them, and we are going to go broke because we're wrong. Now, if we see that and we say, my God, I made a mistake, I'm going to get rid of those, and I'm going to put something out there that's going to sell every day that I can replace and I can get money coming in, we're going to be doing better. So we got to get rid of the stuff that isn't working, right? And that's what he means when he compares it to a business. So again, I want you to know, fearless just means that we are going to be undaunted in doing this. We're going to be unflinching. We're going to walk through our fear, okay? So let's see here. So, we made a decision for God to direct us, but if our minds are filled with damaged and unsaleable goods, God cannot get in. When these things that are wrong are gone, God can then enter our brain, right? So, I love this illusion, and I'm stealing it from Joe and Charlie, but they got me down to a T when they came up with this one. I look at my head like a small 7-Eleven store, right? Not much in there, right? But there's a little bit in there. I've got a display case on one side of my 7-Eleven head. And in that display case, I've got my resentments. Damn him, damn her, they can't do that to me. Don't they know who the hell I am? Right? I'm going to get even with that son of a bitch. When I got stuff like that going on in my head, God cannot get through that. I will guarantee you, God cannot get through. You know, on the other side of my head, I've got a broom closet, and in that broom closet, I've got filled with fears. Oh my God, what's she going to do when she finds out? Oh boy, the boss is going to give it to me today. Oh my God, I don't think I have enough money to go. Oh my God, I'm in trouble. Oh, poor me, right? God can't get through that stuff either, man. Simply can't. Now, we've also got, we'll call it a dairy case. The dairy case is filled with guilt, shame, and remorse, right? Oh my God, I'm the worst son on earth. I'm the worst employee. How could I have done that to my mother? I don't even deserve to live. Oh my God, I'm the worst person. When we're thinking like that, God can't get through that crap either, man. So what we're going to do in the 4-step is we are going to empty out that crap. We're going to get it out of our head. And once we can get that out, right, I guarantee you that some of the good stuff, all the good stuff is going to be able to come in, right? So if I want God to direct my thinking, I'm going to have to do something about my resentments, my fears, my guilt, shame, and remorse so that God can get in, right? And nature abhors a vacuum, so if I am able to get rid of that stuff, and I have to do my part, I have to take action to do that, but if I do my part, God can come into my head and direct my thinking and my actions. If I don't do my part, God can't get in, and it's just that simple, right? It's just that simple. So I think the 4-step, what we're going to do is we made a decision in step 3, and in the 4-step we're going to become unblocked with the stuff that is blocking us, right, from going on. And remember that I said that we're blocked by calamity. Those are all the crazy noises in our head. We're blocked by pomp. That's my ego, my ostentatious boastfulness, and we're blocked by the worship of other things. I got to have more money. I got to have a bigger house. I got to have a better car. I gotta be, I gotta have the respect. I gotta be above that person, right? And the common manifestations we're going to see of these things are our resentments, our fears, and our guilt, shame, and remorse. So, okay, so common manifestations. After common manifestations, let's write, we take selfish and self-centered to extremes. We take selfish and self-centered to extremes.
Pardon me, I'm lost.
Oh, we're back in the book, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Back on page 64,
Gotcha.
we're right after common manifestations. I'm jumping around today. I'm
It's okay.
trying a new format.
That's why I asked.
So what was that?
We take selfish and self-centered to extremes. Right? I mean, we've always got to be first. When I did the 4-step, I couldn't believe. I saw how I always had to be first. I always put my own needs above others. And I mean, when I really saw that, I got to admit I was quite shocked, because I thought that I had always been a pretty good fellow in my life, and I saw that I hadn't been. So let's highlight that first sentence. Resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. Okay, highlight that, and off to the left, we're going to write in Latin, to refeel. Right? Anytime you see the RE, that means to do again. And I believe the stem word in Latin is sentore. So resentment means to refeel. Okay? And we're going to mainly do resentments today. So it's to refeel the hurts and harms that people have either done to us or that we imagine they've done to us, right? From it stem all forms of spiritual dis-ease. Draw a line between the dis and the ease. It's spiritual dis-ease. Right? We have this dis-ease, and for me, that dis-ease would always become so great that the only thing I could do to combat it would be to start drinking. For we have been not only, highlight, mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. Highlight that. And highlight the next 3 lines as well. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. Stop highlighting there. So where it says when the spiritual malady, put a 1 in front of spiritual malady. So we got to take care of our spiritual malady first. Okay, when we do that, we straighten out, put a 2 in front of mentally, and then put a 3 in front of physically. So what we've got to do is we've got to go through the book, and we got to do the work, and we got to straighten out spiritually first, and then everything else is going to follow from that, right? And, I'm not saying that you don't go and you don't, exercise and do things of that nature, but we're talking a little bit more than physically. We're talking about the physical world, our relationships with other people, with our boss, with our significant other, with our children, right? And mentally, we're talking about the craziness that's going on in our head. So we've got to straighten out spiritually first for the others to do it. And again, I always say this, is that we go to meetings and we do the work, right? We do the actions first. If we do the actions first, our thinking is going to follow. Most other therapies in the world are going to say, get your thinking straightened out first, and then your actions will follow. But we're backwards people. We've got to take the actions first, and then our thinking is going to get better, right? And then when our thinking gets better, our actions get better. So, we've got actions, thinking, actions. It's kind of weird, but it's a paradox, but there it is. We highlighted, in dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. Okay, highlight that. Next to it, we're going to write 4th step instructions. 4th step instructions. And they're gonna give them to us quickly. So we're gonna put column 1 next to that, what I just read. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. So write 4-step instructions somewhere to the left, and then write column 1 somewhere in there. And that is going to be the column on the sheets that I've given you, and I'm going to show you how to fill these out. Now these sheets that I'm giving you, I'm not making up anything that's not in the big book. So when we get to that point, we're going to see how this sheet is the blank form of page, is that page 65? My book, I can't even see the page number anymore. We set them on paper. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry, period. We asked ourselves why we were angry. Next to that, put column 2. That's column 2 on our sheets. In most cases, it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So next to that somewhere, write column 3. Column 3. And then on the bottom of page 64, I'm going to have you write, must work on this, stay diligent. And what that means, must work on this, stay diligent. When we work on the 4th step, and I'm going to give you specifically how to do it by running my own columns today so you see how to do it. I joke about this, man, but I had the cleanest bathroom on earth, right? Because I would find any excuse not to work on my 4th step. Oh, I better go and scrub the toilet. Oh, golly darn it, I'm a little bit low on salt. I better run to the grocery store. So I would find any reason to try to not to do this. But if we do it just a little bit every night, I finally started doing it a half an hour every night. I got it done rather quickly, right? So these are still 4-step instructions. So we were sore, we were burned up. On our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. Highlight, was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations which had been interfered with? Highlight that, and again, write 3rd column. That's the 3rd column again. We were usually as definite as this example, okay? So I'm going to kind of go through this. So now, when we do it, right, the first instruction was we listed people, institution, or principles with whom we were angry, period, right? So I want you guys to do column 1 first. In other words, just think about if you ever went to a bar and you sat on the bar stool, and you talk to the guy next to you, you got column 1, that son of a bitchin' boss. I can't believe my wife did that. Oh, those kids don't listen. So we've been complaining about column 1 our whole lives. So column 1 is right here, and we're on the resentment form, and you got those sheets in there too. I am resentful at, and we try to do this first. Everybody, and keep a little notepad with you, right? And write down everybody that you're resentful with. And we try to do column 1 first. So we're going to see what Bill did. We're going to see what Bill did with Mr. Brown. So for purposes of this, I'm going to go acrosswise, although we don't do that. So I am resentful at Mr. Brown. Okay, so Bill is pissed at Mr. And so in other words, he wakes up in the middle of the night and said, "Dadgone Mr. Brown, he's making advances towards my wife, and he told my wife that I had a girlfriend on the side, and Brown it might get my job at the office." So Bill's waking up in the middle of the night and thinking of these things and reliving them and getting angry, right? So what does this affect? And it affects column 3, sex relations, self-esteem, security, right? A lot of self-esteem and sex relations in that one, and there's a lot of fear involved in it. Next, Bill is mad at Mrs. Jones, okay? So, maybe he's walking down to the store and all of a sudden Mrs. Jones pops into his head. And he says, she's a nut. She snubbed me. She didn't treat me well. She committed her husband for drinking. Now, because she committed her husband for drinking, maybe I'm next, doggone it. And her husband is my friend and she's a gossip. So he's thinking about all these things that he's angry about Mrs. Jones. And that affects his personal relationships and his self-esteem. And we're going to see how when I run my columns. Now, everybody, I think, would be mad if you have a boss, right? So my employer, he's unreasonable, unjust, overbearing, threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account, right? Very not understanding at all. And that affects his self-esteem, right? Because, he's probably getting called onto the carpet for being late and stuff, and it affects his security. He loses a job, he loses his money. Now, most people have the wife at the top of the list or the husband. So he's resentful at wife, misunderstands and nags. She likes Brown. She wants the house put in her name. So that's affecting his pride, right? That's affecting his personal relations. because he's, Mr. Brown, he's going to be kind of pissed at Mr. Brown, and it's affecting the sex relations, right? And his security. She wants the house, and he's afraid. Oh my God, she's going to throw me into the insane asylum, commit me for drinking, and take the house. Then she's going to marry Mr. Brown. Yeah, I'm going to be out in the street, right? So it affects all of these things. So we've got some more instructions here. Went back through our lives. Highlight the next sentence. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. Circle the word honesty again. So when we're doing column 1, at the bottom of page 65, write everything that left bad taste in mouth since birth. This is the first time you're doing your 4th step. You write everything down. I don't care if you got to go back to 3rd grade when Craigie Gardner hit you in the face with a golf club, even if it was by accident, right? That actually happened to me. But we're going to write everything that left a bad taste in mouth since birth. Now, if you've done a 4th step and you've gotten rid of a lot of stuff, then what we have to do is we just have to write the stuff that's bothering us really bad in our lives at the present moment. But if you're doing your first 4th step, everything bad taste in mouth since birth. Okay, so let's hold off for a second. I'm going to go back to my notes again. Resentment means to refeel, and I'm going to explain what that is. A resentment is not regular anger. Okay. Somewhere, I love this example. I'm out in the backyard and I'm working on something, and I'm hammering some nails, and I whack my finger with that hammer and go, ah! And I throw the hammer across the yard, and I go, God darn hammer, right? And I'm angry, and that's normal. Of course I'm angry, right? But you know what, man? That night in bed, I'm not going to wake up and go, I'm going to get even with that damn hammer, right? A week later, I'm not thinking about how that hammer got me, right? But we do it with people, we do it with institutions, and we do it with principles, right? So resentment means to refeel. So let's say that my boss yells at me. I'm dealing with a customer. Maybe I did something, right? He comes up and he goes, yeah, got it, John Henry, you did this and that. And I'm talking to somebody, and I get really angry. And you know what? That anger is justified, right? It's normal. Anybody would get anger there, right? But it's an hour later, I go into the next room by myself, and I go, that dirty son of a bitch, right? I get home from work that night, and my significant other says, hey, John, how was your day? And I'm thinking, I don't respond. I go, how could that son of a bitch have done that to me? I wake up 2 nights later at 3 in the morning and go, how am I going to get even with that son of a bitch for doing that, right? So what we're doing is we are refeeling the same thing over and over again, right? And a funny thing happens with a resentment, right? Every time I relive a situation or a resentment in my head, I change it. I change it, man. So what happens is, and I do this because I'm not always honest with myself. So whenever I replay a resentment in my head, each time what they did to me gets a little bit worse. What I might have done to get it started gets a little bit less, and the harm they did me gets a little bit deeper, just a little bit deeper. So if I replay a resentment over and over in my head enough, I end up saying to myself, I was standing there doing nothing when they came along and just gave it to me, right? So we change the facts, right? Fuzzy recall, alternative facts. So resentment is a gun that shoots backwards, right? I'm going to give you a couple of illusions here of what a resentment is like. When you got wet pants, everybody can see them, but only you can feel them, right? I got a resentment. I drink poison and hope you die, right? Resentments take space up in my head rent-free. And expectations of other people are resentments on the layaway plan. The layaway plan. So, when I relive a resentment long enough, it comes back at me as self-resentment, right? In other words, it's like, I get treated so bad at work, and I can't believe that I even still work there. Why do I let these people do that to me, right? So it comes back as self-resentment, and we start hating ourselves for letting it happen, and then it turns to the sickest thing of all, which is self-pity. We start feeling sorry for ourselves, right? We go home at night, we sit down, we play it over in our head, we blame them, and we make ourselves sick. We make ourselves sick and sicker, right? And funny enough, we go out and we have a day where nobody picks on us, right? If nobody picks on me on a day, you know what I do? I think about what they're thinking about me. I know that son of a bitch is thinking this about me, right? And it's just crazy. So let's get out our resentment sheet.